Hello, my name is Aria. I am a student of English, and this is my story. I want to tell you about my life in London and my fantastic teacher. You can read my story and learn English with me. It is a beautiful summer day, and I am traveling on a train. There are two ladies sitting opposite me. I don't know them, but from their conversation, I know they are foreigners. I don't understand much of what they are saying, but I know they speak English. I also want to speak English, but I am a beginner. I don't know many words. However, this is an opportunity for me to speak English. I decide to try to speak to the ladies. I say some sentences in my basic English, and they understand what I say. I don't know many words and I speak slowly, but the ladies are kind and patient. I am able to have a simple conversation with them. I tell them that I want to learn English. They are happy when they hear that, and they tell me that they are from England. They are traveling home from a conference. We speak for about 10 minutes. Then it's time for me to get off the train. While I am thanking them for speaking with me, they give me their address and phone number. They tell me I can visit them in England if I want to, and then we say goodbye. This is how my journey in learning English begins. After this meeting, I decide to work on my English skills more. I translate texts and I watch films in English. I work on my English for 2 hours, almost every day. In 6 months, I am able to speak quite well. It is great, but I want to know more. I decide to go to London to study English there. One of the students asks a question that is interesting for me. She asks, "What is the best way to learn new words?" Our teacher says, "There are many things you can do to learn new words. I will tell you what is statistically the most effective way for learning new words. It is reading. When people read when they learn a new language, they learn twice as fast as people who don't read. It is good to read for at least 30 minutes every day. I want to show you what you should do if you want to get the maximum gains from reading. First, it is very important that the book or text which you read is interesting for you. It is important that you enjoy reading. The book can be a nice story, or it can have some useful information for your job or your hobby. Don't read a text that isn't interesting for you. It is also good to read a text in which you know most of the words. When you don't know many words, you can get frustrated. You always want to enjoy everything you do while using English. It is good to choose a text which is interesting and also suitable for your level. When you read the text and you see a word that you don't understand, you get a dictionary and you look up the word. Then you continue reading. You don't have to write the word anywhere. You don't have to make a list of new words. You don't have to try to remember the word. You only focus on understanding the text. When it is clear to you what the word means, you continue reading. Anytime there is a new word for you, you do the same. Reading also has another great advantage. When you read, you learn new words. And you also learn how every word is connected to other words in the sentence. Then you can see how to link the words correctly. This way of learning new words is very effective. Give it a try. and you will see how fast you can learn new words. On Wednesday, I go to school again. There is one student in the class who is quieter than the other students. He is from South Korea. When our teacher asks if we have any questions for her, this student from Korea says that he has a question. He says that he has a big problem with pronunciation. He knows that his pronunciation is not very good, but he doesn't know how to improve it. He doesn't speak much because he doesn't want others to listen to his bad pronunciation. He says that he reads and watches films in English a lot. He understands very well, but he also wants to improve his speaking. He asks if there is something he could do to improve his pronunciation. When my teacher hears this, she says, "Okay, I will tell you something about pronunciation and how to practice it. I will also teach you a great technique that can help all of you to be better at pronunciation. First, we have to look at why students have problems with pronunciation. When we speak, we have to move our mouth. We have to use muscles in our mouth. We all do that. The problem is that when you speak English, sometimes you use your muscles the same way you would use them in your native language. Then your pronunciation is different from the pronunciation of native speakers. This happens to many students who learn English. Almost everybody has a bit different pronunciation than they should have. In fact, it is not a big problem because usually people understand what you want to say, even though your pronunciation is not perfect. However, you can work on your pronunciation and make it better. There is a great technique that can help you a lot. The name of this technique is shadowing. The technique is very simple. When you do shadowing, you simply copy the sound that you hear immediately after hearing it. When children learn their first language, they learn it by copying. They copy after their parents again and again until their pronunciation is perfect. You can learn English pronunciation in the same way. We have a new student in our class. Her name is Monica, and she is from Italy. At the beginning of the lesson, my teacher asks her how her life is. My teacher knows Monica from 1 year ago when she attended her class. That one was a class for beginners, and it was only for 2 weeks during summer holiday. When Monica speaks, her English is beautiful. Her pronunciation is very good, and she is very fluent. My teacher is very happy, and she asks Monica where she learned English so well. Monica replies that she didn't go to school. She learned English at home, using the advice and techniques from last summer's class. She did a lot of reading, shadowing, and thinking aloud. She tried to think more in English than in Italian. The 2 weeks she spent in class helped her understand exactly how to work on her English every day. My teacher asks Monica to explain more about thinking aloud. Monica says when she started with this technique, it wasn't easy. She began with very simple sentences. I can speak English. It is good. That I can speak English. I want to be better. I need to practice every day. The sentences were really simple because she realized that what she thought in Italian was too long and complicated to say in English. Finding simpler ways to express her thoughts in English was the hardest part, but after some time it became normal. Then something interesting happened. She met a man from Australia who was on holiday in Italy. Even though she was still a beginner, she could speak with him without big problems. Her sentences were simple and short, but because she had said them many times before, when thinking aloud, she was able to speak without having to translate from Italian to English in her head. After meeting the Australian man, Monica started using thinking aloud even more. This technique helped her express her ideas much better. She still uses it every day and finds it really powerful for improving speaking skills. Sometimes when I speak, I am not sure if I am using correct grammar. Can you help me understand what to do if I want to learn grammar? Thank you for your question. There are two groups of students: those who study English because they want to speak, and those who study to pass an exam. Each group needs a different approach. For those who need English for speaking, you don't have to study grammar extensively. Think about how you learned your native language. You learned it without studying grammar rules. You can learn English grammar naturally by using the language. The best way is through reading a lot. Books are written with good grammar, so when you read, you learn grammar in the context of whole sentences. I also recommend shadowing. When you do shadowing, you practice correct grammar naturally. You don't have to try to remember rules. You simply copy sentences with correct grammar. If you want to speak but also study some grammar, you can visit grammar websites that show what grammar is important for different levels of English. For students who need to pass an exam, I recommend studying specifically for that exam. It's helpful to get past versions of the exam if they're available and practice with them. Your exam will be different, but the structure is usually similar. I suggest going to the exam only when your practice results show you could pass successfully. This is good news for me. I don't like studying grammar rules. I learn English because I want to speak, not to pass exams. I am happy that I can learn grammar naturally through reading books. Reading is something I enjoy, so this approach makes much more sense to me than memorizing rules. When I look at grammar websites later, I can see grammar rules with examples for each level. They have 3 levels based on knowing 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 words. It helps me understand what grammar I should focus on at my current level, but most importantly, I know now that I can improve my grammar simply by reading and using English regularly. During today's lesson, one of our students asked an important question. She wanted to know how she could test her English level and track her progress. None of us knew exactly how many words we knew in English. Even though we were all intermediate students, our teacher told us about a website designed specifically for language learners. The test there has only 2 simple steps and can help us discover how many words we know. What's great is that we can take this test every month to see how much we're improving. When we all took the test, we found out most of us knew between 2,000 and 2,200 words. Only Monica and the student from South Korea knew about 2,500 words. It was fascinating to see our vocabulary levels in actual numbers. This information was really useful because it helped us understand what learning materials we should use. For example, when looking at grammar resources, we could see that we should already know the grammar for levels 1 and 2 and could start working on level 3 grammar, which is designed for students who know between 2,000 and 3,000 words. Our teacher explained that testing our progress regularly is important. She recommended taking the vocabulary test once a month to track our improvement. It's motivating to see your progress in actual numbers, and it helps you know when you are ready to move to more advanced materials. I realized that knowing my vocabulary level would help me choose the right books to read and know which grammar points to focus on. It's like having a map that shows exactly where you are on your English learning journey. One student raised her hand and said, "I want to practice speaking with people around me, but I'm afraid of making mistakes. I don't want to look stupid. Can you help me?" Our teacher smiled warmly and shared her own experience. I also learn new languages. Right now, I'm learning Spanish. When I speak Spanish, I don't care if I make mistakes. Think about when you learned your native language. You didn't care about mistakes then. So why should you care now? She explained that her main goal is simply to express her ideas. She knows that through reading, speaking, and shadowing, her Spanish will naturally improve. It might sound too simple, but it works well for her and many of her students. When I speak, I only focus on the present moment, she continued. I know about 1,500 words in Spanish. That's like a 2-year-old child. 2-year-olds make lots of mistakes when they speak, but they don't care. They keep using their language, and by age 3, they make fewer mistakes. By age 4, they speak very well. She encouraged us to have the same attitude. Most of us know about 2,000 words, so it's perfectly normal to make occasional mistakes. You can't improve without making mistakes. It's impossible. It's like learning to play a musical instrument. At first, you make mistakes, but that's a necessary part of the learning process. If you didn't go through this period of making mistakes, you couldn't reach higher levels, she explained. By continuing to practice, the mistakes gradually disappear. If you want to make fewer mistakes, do lots of reading and shadowing. When you speak, focus only on exchanging ideas. Don't worry about mistakes. She reminded us that everyone who learns a foreign language makes mistakes sometimes. Even famous people, company executives, and politicians. When we watch them on TV, we can see they don't care about mistakes. They care about what's important, expressing their ideas. We should do the same. It's absolutely normal that you don't remember a new word immediately. Usually you'll need to look up a word 5 times before you remember it. Some words, especially verbs, might need to be looked up 10 or even 15 times. When we learn a new word, it goes through 5 distinct phases. Only when you reach the final phase do you truly remember the word well. Let me explain these phases to you. The first phase is when you encounter the word for the first time and don't know what it means. You look it up in the dictionary. The second phase is when you see the word again. You recognize that you've seen it before, but still can't remember its meaning. You look it up again. In the third phase, you start to have a feeling about what the word means. You might know it's some kind of object, animal, or action, but you're not completely sure. The fourth phase is when you understand the word when you see it, but can't use it yourself when speaking. At this point, the word is in your passive vocabulary. Finally, the fifth phase is when you can actively use the word in your own speech. This explains why it's impossible to remember a new word perfectly the first time you see it. You need to let each word naturally progress through all these phases. Don't feel discouraged when you have to look up the same word multiple times. Every time you move from one phase to the next, you're getting closer to your goal of being able to use that word naturally in everyday conversation. This is why reading is so valuable. It gives you multiple encounters with words in different contexts, helping them move through these phases naturally. The more you read, the more opportunities you have to strengthen your vocabulary this way. Thank you for asking about listening skills. There are two main types of materials you can use for listening practice: audio recordings and films. Each has different rules for how you should use them. For audio materials, like podcasts or audiobooks, you should understand at least 95% of the words. If there are too many unfamiliar words, read the text first if possible. Remember, when practicing listening, your main goal is understanding the spoken language, not learning new vocabulary. It's essential to use materials at your level. Simplified English books with audio recordings are excellent because you can choose content that matches your abilities. Try reading the book first, then listen to the recording during your commute or at home. When you reach about 2,000 words in English, you can start watching films and videos. Watch them first with subtitles to understand the story, then watch again without subtitles. If you really enjoy a film, watch it multiple times. You'll understand more with each viewing. Reality shows can be easier to understand than films or documentaries because they follow predictable patterns. If you're interested in specific topics, like nature or cooking, watch videos about those subjects. Your interest will help maintain your motivation. Aim for at least 30 minutes of listening practice every day. Focus on what you can already understand, even if it's just 10% at first. Don't get discouraged by the parts you don't understand yet. Celebrate every new phrase or sentence you comprehend. Listening is actually the easiest way to learn because it's passive. You just need to listen. But consistency is key. With regular practice, you'll gradually understand more and more of what you hear. Remember, everyone starts by understanding very little. What matters is continuing to listen and gradually building your comprehension skills. Progress might seem slow at first, but with daily practice, you'll be surprised by how much you can understand After a few months, looking back on my journey learning English, I realize how much I've grown over the past year. I started as a beginner, struggling with basic conversations, and now I can confidently teach English to others. Let me share what I've learned about the most effective ways to master English. The key to success is remarkably simple. You need to read, listen, and speak English for about 30 minutes each every day. That's 90 minutes total of active language. Engagement. You don't need to formally study. Just use the language in ways you enjoy. Reading should be for pleasure or information, not studying. Choose books or articles that interest you and are at your level. When you encounter new words, look them up quickly and continue reading. Don't worry about memorizing them. They'll stick naturally through repeated exposure. For listening practice, start with simple audiobooks or news broadcasts. As you improve, move on to films and videos about topics that interest you. Remember, it's fine if you don't understand everything. At first, focus on what you do understand and celebrate your progress. Speaking practice is essential, whether with others or through techniques like shadowing and thinking aloud. Don't worry about making mistakes. They're a natural part of learning. Focus on communicating your ideas rather than achieving perfection. I've learned that motivation and enjoyment are crucial. When you like what you're doing with English, whether it's watching movies, reading stories, or chatting with friends, learning happens naturally. You don't need special talent. You already proved you can learn languages by mastering your native tongue. Looking at my own progress, I started with 2,000 words and now know 4,000. I've gone from being nervous about speaking to teaching beginners. The methods my teacher shared really work, not just for me, but for all my students too. Remember, learning English isn't about studying harder. It's about using the language more. Keep it enjoyable, stay consistent with your practice, and trust that improvement will come naturally over time.